finding percentages of nice numbers without using a calculator. If we know some percentages and fraction concepts and the quantities are friendly, we can find percentages without a calculator. Let's find some percentages of 400. 50% of 400 is the same as half of 400, or 400 divided by 2. You would find that 50% of 400 is 200. 25% of 400 is the same as 1/4 of 400, or 400 divided by 4. You would find that 25% of 400 is 100. You can also cut 400 in half and then cut that result in half again to find 25%. If you want to find 75% of something, you can use 3 sets of 25%. 75% of 400 is the same as 3 sets of 100, or 300. Notice that 50% is also 2 sets of 25%. 2 sets of 25% in this case will be 2 sets of 100, which is 200. This gives you a double check on your quantities. Finding some other percentages of 400, 10% of 400 is the same as 1/10 of 400, or 400 divided by 10. You will find that 10% of 400 is 40. 5% is half of 10%, so if you know the value for 10%, you can find the value for 5% by cutting in half. Since 10% of 400 is 40, 5% of 400 would be half of that, or 20. If you want to find a percentage like 70% of 400, you can use 7 sets of 10% to get 7 times 40, or 280. If you want to find a percentage like 45% of 400, you can use 9 sets of 5% to get 9 times 20, or 180. So if we have a really friendly number and some basic percentage concepts in place, we can find some percentages calculator free. Now try these. These are all based on 60. I'd like to know about 50% of 60, 25% of 60, 75% of 60, 10% of 60, 5% of 60, 90% of 60, and 15% of 60. So if I were you, I'd pause the video, try them on my own, and then relaunch the video and see if your answers compare to mine. For 50% of 60, you should get 30, since half of 60 is 30, and half is the same thing as 50%. For 25% of 60, you should get 15, since 1/4 of 60, or 60 divided by 4, is 15. Sorry, I lost track of myself there. You will get, for 25% of 60, you will get 15. 1/4 of 60 is 15. You could have also taken half of 50% from the previous problem. Half of 30 is also 15. So 25% of 60 should give you a value of 15. For 75% of 60, you should get 45. You can use 3 sets of 25% or 3 sets of 15 to get you 45. 10% of 60, you should get 6. Remember that 10% is 1/10, and that means divide by 10. 60 divided by 10 is 6. For 5% of 60, you should get 3. Remember that 5% is half of 10%. We just said that 10% was 6, and half of 6 would then be 3. 90% of 60 could be constructed in a couple ways, but one way to do it, you should get an answer of 54, and one method to get there would be to use 9 sets of 10%. So 9 times 6 will give you 54. 15% of 60, you should get 9. One way to get there would be to use 3 sets of 5% to build up to 15%, and that would mean that 3 times 3 equals 9.